All right, this is the meeting between Trump and the El Salvadorian president about the Maryland man that was deported mistakenly.
A man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
Okay, so a few things here. Saying that he's been here illegally is true. In 2011, I think he came here when he was 16 because his family was being threatened by gangs in El Salvador. However, he did make a life for himself, get married to a U.S. citizen, have 3 kids, all that stuff. Everything was fine. Then in 2019, they're saying that they found that he was a part of MS-13. And I haven't seen anything online regarding those actual rulings. I've looked for them. Maybe they're private. Who knows? But I haven't found any evidence suggesting that he was actually a part of the gang, which is what they're alleging. However, they are kind of following that baseline of if you are here illegally, no matter what it is, then you shouldn't be here. But again, back to 2019, he was granted protections where he wasn't supposed to ever be deported back to El Salvador because of the violence against him. And a judge ruled that was valid, that his concerns for being attacked or hit or abused or killed, right, by those gangs was valid, and that he was not supposed to return to El Salvador. And I guess that was in these protections are written in papers, which is why the Trump administration has said, oh, it was a mistake. However, now that he is there, it's international law that we're dealing with. So it becomes a little bit different.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN and they always ask.
The Supreme Court, right. Almost forgot. She said the Supreme Court ruled that they can facilitate the return of Kilmar, who is the man that was mistakenly deported, by providing a plane, but only if El Salvador's government says, yes, we will send him back. And currently he's an El Salvadorian citizen. And I don't know, we give a lot of money to El Salvador to help them with their prisons, with their crime, all that kind of stuff. So I do think we'd have some bargaining chips and leeway. Whether or not the Trump administration will take it, I don't know. I doubt it.
Because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question?
CNN does suck, true.
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens.
I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy there because they were telling the Ukrainian president kind of what to do on his end, right?
Starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump
just repeating
declared
what Pam
MS-13
said.
to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid. Which
I think there's also an issue with labeling MS-13 as a terrorist organization. Not an issue for me, but I think judges have brought up issues regarding that as well, which is probably what's spearheading this idea that he should be brought back.
meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric acts.
Again, I haven't found anything about him being a part of MS-13. This is all alleged. If it's true, then this would be correct.
In the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
it
Court is
to get it
asking
back?
to,
And
that-
what was the ruling
that your
in the
position?
Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our
And it's not technically in their favor. They are saying that they need to facilitate the man's return.
favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele,
Presidente
what is
Bukele?
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I smuggle, how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not.
Okay, so he's not going to do it. So here are my thoughts on it. Because Trump administration has given so much money to the El Salvadorian government and helped them clean up so much of their crime, I think there's something backdoor going on. I think the El Salvadorian president does not want to mess with what Trump has in mind. And if Trump set this precedent where this man belongs in El Salvador, they're using loopholes, which aren't really loopholes. It is true, he is an El Salvadorian citizen, but I think the El Salvadorian president is more so going along with it because Trump might have him by the balls a little bit. There was also no court proceedings before his deportation. Like, there was no trial, there was no anything. He was just deported within 3 days. Could be wrong on that timeline, but I think I'm pretty close. I'm gonna do more research and I'm gonna do a full video on this sometime this week. So stay tuned for that.
Fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the
That's what I was saying.
criminals so we can go back.
They
and
just
the
turned it
murder
into a
capital of the
safe
world.
place.
That's not going to happen.
Thanks to
Well,
Trump.
They'd love to have a criminal, released into
I
our
mean, there's
So
a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick, these are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his
Okay, they're all just jibber jabbering about the same thing. Yes, he is a citizen of El Salvador. We know that, right?
country. That's where you
In
deport
2019,
people back to
supposedly
the
he got
country
these
of
protections where he wasn't
Except
supposed to go
for
back,
Venezuela,
as I've already said.
refusing
So
to take people back of places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said
How long do we have to
that
answer
it must
this
be
question from
facilitated.
you? Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that
He did
we're
say
keeping
that.
criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that?
I don't think anybody wants these criminals and murderers to be here. I don't think that's the point. I mean, maybe the Democrats did during the election because no voter ID, but I don't think they specifically want that right now. I think in this case in particular, especially CNN, they're not going to get much out of it. Specifically right now, it looks like Trump is just kind of snuffing the Supreme Court because yes, they ruled that foreign policy is done by the president. However, they also are calling for this man to be brought back. So,
Why do you go over and over? And
and that's the end of that, I guess. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments.